It's the Eternity Forge game development vlog number 4. Going to be talking about animation and enemy AI again. Now, I spent most of the last week making a tree because I didn't plan things out. Sometimes that happens in life, but I'll be better prepared next time. So, animated entities in my game. Basically, the character animations are running at about 30 frames per second. The game itself is running at 60. So with this grass and these trees, they're actually running about 7.5 frames, and I kind of like doing that because I'm using sprites. If I wanted to run the animations at 60 frames, it'd be hundreds of frames of animation. But by slowing it down like this, it's kind of giving the animations a hand-drawn quality, which I kind of like the way that looks. So I'm probably just gonna roll with that. As far as the rat guy goes, he now patrols 16 points spread out from his origin point. North, south, east, west, and northwest, southwest, northeast, south. Southeast, that kind of thing, and really rudimentary detection of the enemy here. You see he's using the same radius as the sight line to detect when somebody is close to him. So you see I just went in, it goes off the center point of the player entity, and he starts chasing them. And also I programmed it to, when you get a certain distance away, about 1,200 units. We'll just call them units. He goes back to whatever point he was targeting. And in the future, I'd like to make 2 radiuses. And the purpose of that's going to be when I have a sneak mechanic in the game, that the roll it checks against determines whether or not he sees you, but the 2 areas will have, obviously one will be easier to sneak than the other. An outside perimeter and inside perimeter will be much harder, and I'll probably do a look direction as well. And another thing I want to talk about with these animations is that I've also programmed them to be somewhat pretty random. So you see we have 2 trees here, and they're obviously not running through the animation the same exact way. And again, just using C++ standard rand function to determine how far up the animation sequence it goes, and then just returns back to start, which is really pretty good for simulating wind and swaying branches and stuff. These tree animations I'm not really happy with because everything's kind of moving together. Like I said before, I didn't plan this out, so I think the thing to do is to take larger sections of branches and leaves and animate each of those individually, and then group them all together and run that animation. And of course, all the frames for all of these are fairly small. These trees are fairly big. They're like 384, but this grass and flowers is 128 by 64, which when you start getting that small, you start to lose some of the detail in what you're doing. But it's also lending to the hand-drawn effect, which I think, I think that really looks real nice. It's kind of a throwback to older games. Of course, with older games, you were always limited by resolution and color depth, which we're not really limited by anymore. But I'm still going through and optimizing all these PNG files to be minimum amount of colors as possible, just to save on space. I mean, for example, this grass is like 30 frames of animation. Maybe it's only like 300 kilobytes, which isn't very much, but then you start multiplying that by all the assets that are eventually going to end up at a level, and the file size is probably going to be start getting pretty big. So next week I'd like to I'll have to come back to the sneak mechanic, but what I want to do next week is work on some of the combat animations for the player and the rat guy, and start getting those systems into the game. And another side goal would be maybe to start adding sounds, just the sound of the rat, maybe some environmental sounds, and music.